It is Monday, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here. If you've had a busy weekend like I've had, or like a lot of Christians have had, then you might feel like, man, how is it Monday? When did I get to rest? When do I get to rest? And you really haven't for some reason, especially for those of us who are in ministry to various capacities. We're going to jump into this and have a discussion that's pretty open-ended. And so let me bring in my very good friend, Tom. Tom, what's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? Happy Easter Monday.
How you feeling, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm exhausted from the weekend, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
Very happy to be here.
your weekend was really like lots of worship practices.
Yeah, jam-packed.
Good Friday, bunch of other stuff, Easter Sunday.
Yeah. How are you, man? You gave a nice, fiery Good Friday message.
You think so? You think it was fiery?
No, I think you were being contained. You were being very professional. It was really weird. It's like when you hear your friend make calls at work, and you're like, you don't talk like that. All of a sudden, they're like, "Hi, this is Tim calling from." That was kind of you on.
Did
Friday.
you really?
But I thought it was fiery. Yeah, I thought it was strong.
So I put it up on YouTube. I actually took it down today.
Mm-hmm.
I might put it back up. Just looking at some data analytics stuff. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty good talk. It had a certain purpose to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'll just leave that there. For those who haven't seen it, you might have to wait because it's on private now. Tom, there's been a lot of stuff that's been going on, and we want to touch upon some of these things. So, folks, say hello, drop a comment, say what's going on, hit the like button, and all that, as we get going on this Monday. So we woke up to some news today that Pope Francis has passed away. Now, a lot of people are and have been making videos and responding and reacting to these things. And you and I have been texting from the morning saying, okay, what like angle do we want to go at this with? And what's like the most reasonable, articulate, fair-minded way of kind of dealing with this stuff? We've sort of like been waiting for the Pope to die.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that I heard that he did like a whole Easter thing yesterday.
Yeah, so yesterday was actually kind of weird because he actually, it was the first time in a long time that he'd taken the little Pope-sicle or Pope car, whatever it's called, through
Pope
the
mobile.
Yeah.
Pope-sicle.
Pope-sicle. Pope-cycle.
Pope mobile.
Pope mobile, yeah. Yeah. And actually, he also met J.D. Vance yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so.
Somebody had, Twitter is crazy or whatever, X. Somebody had put a little image and it says, the Pope meets with J.D. Vance. And hours later, the Pope dies. The J.D. Vance is the Antichrist.
Yeah, J.D. can't catch a break. He also recently dropped a championship trophy.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Well, it was weird because I don't know whether that was actually fully his fault. Like, he should know that the trophy's in two pieces. Trophies generally are.
Yeah. Because
they have a base to them. But the guy's kind of like weirdly handing it to him, and he goes, okay, I'll just grab the top, and then, But I don't know, like, do they not prep you for this stuff when you're...
So when you're saying you were waiting for the Pope to die, like you wanted him to die?
No. We knew, right?
Yeah, I
like,
just wanted you to clarify.
Yeah, the general public knew the Pope was
Yeah.
going to pass away because of his health. Now, immediately some of the thoughts, if I was watching this channel and you and I are sitting here talking about Pope Francis and his death and stuff like that, somebody might say, why are these guys who are Protestants talking about the death of the Pope? Why does it matter to you? And all these things. So let's talk about that a little bit.
So Art, there are about, I think, I'm guesstimating here, like 1 billion to 1.4 billion Catholics in the world. That's part of the reason why it matters. So these people do look at the Pope as their Holy Father, right? So it would be weird to say like the leader of 1.4 billion people died and then like we shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
What are your general thoughts about this whole process right now? About, have you seen this before? Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen it. What is it? Two times that I can remember. Pope John Paul, Benedict, but and then Francis now, so third time. It's very interesting to me, but that's partly because I'm a history nerd, and these things have, right, like the whole gathering, the conclave that happens, and the smoke that gets released, and the meetings that are happening. There's a lot of kind of mysterious aspects of inner conversations and dialogues. And again, usually it's easier for people to develop conspiracies when there are unknowns, right? Like, for example, one of our comments right now is, how do you know that he's really dead? Maybe they're faking it.
That would be weird.
How do we know anybody is really dead? You know, might just like, hey, I was at the other day, this kind of conversation came up. This is going to take us into cuckoo places. But have you ever seen a baby pigeon?
Have I?
Yeah.
No.
You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah. So there's no baby pigeons.
No, it's that all pigeons are robots that the government uses to spy on you.
Yeah, that could be, honestly.
They're all fake because you never see a baby one. So this is the sort of stuff. Like, talk about an argument from silence, Syrup, and there's absolutely no need to go into like kooky land, like really, really whacked out kooky land, and just be able to disagree properly.
Yeah,
with whatever it is. So I agree with you. Like, I'm of the same mind of, say, if the president of China passes away,
yeah,
like, we'd be talking about him.
That's a big deal.
Now, that's just a political leader. Popes during history have been political and religious leaders, generally speaking. Like, popes talk into politics.
Yeah.
And one of the unique things, I think, with Pope Francis is that he's talked into some political situations pretty aggressively. Even yesterday meeting with J.D. Vance, he's talked about the whole migrant situations. He's talked about like American political policy. And so that's partly why I think it's important for us to talk about this. But also be reasonable about what's going on with Catholics. How do they think about this? What could the future be on some of this stuff? Like, those are the sort of things that we actually want to have a conversation about.
Yeah.
And so birds are fake.
Also, the Pope is actually the leader of a country, right?
Correct.
Like, literally a country.
Yeah, the Vatican is a country.
Actually, they have their own military too, by the way. I found that out.
Is the Swiss Guard actually considered the military, or that's his personal?
That's what I heard this morning, but it was on CNN, so it could be fake news.
But is it the Swiss Guard?
It is the Swiss Guard.
Okay, yeah. But they're not that big. Like, they can't go to war.
No, definitely. That would be the shortest war in human history. So what do you think are some... let me ask you a question. What do you know about this current Pope Francis and some of the comments he's made? Clearly, like, we're not Catholics, so it's not like we're actually going through his theology, what he believes doctrinally, and we're not experts in this, obviously.
Yeah.
But what are some general things you heard about him, because everyone says, both the liberals and the conservatives say he was different.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you know about him that made him a little different?
Well, I'll tell you stuff that's bothered me about him. Mm-hmm. Just because whenever you're in ministry, you always get people who maybe are not very knowledgeable on, like, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox kind of inner dialogues and leadership and all that stuff. Like, I quite often speak to people and they'll be like, "What? But the Pope says," and then I'm like, "Well, I don't care what the Pope says." Now, I say that not that I don't at all care, because clearly I think we ought to, because whether we like it or not, he is the face and has been in a lot of people's minds, and I'm talking non-Catholics, like, of being the leader of Christianity, especially people who don't really know some details. One of the things that's bothered me is that he hasn't been very clear in his communication on various things. And I don't know whether some of that stuff has been because of translations, because I've seen some of that go around. Like, I've seen somebody be like, "Well, he didn't say it in English, and this translation was put out and made people think he was saying this, but he wasn't saying that. He was really saying this. Or he's made comments, and then it's ended up becoming like they've had to release kind of clarification points. The Vatican has had to do that. So just in theological conversations, I frankly don't care whether it's the Pope or Billy Graham or anyone who's got some kind of a authoritative position, presidents, like I think ought to be careful in their communication.
Yeah.
Ought to be well thought out, written out, and all that. So I'd say the same thing about presidents.
Are there any specific things you have in mind about his papacy, especially as of late, because he made a lot of headlines speaking about the blessing of LGTB couples. He spoke.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? Like because I saw so many people reacting to that and being critical, but also like understanding. And from my understanding, and I've read a number of articles on this. From my understanding, what he was saying is this: can any Catholic, anyone who's baptized into the Catholic Church, walk into a church and ask for a blessing from their priests? So this is my understanding of it. And the answer to that is, yeah, like they can go to any priest and say, bless me, and then the priest will do it. Well, he goes, well, you have some people who are LGBTQ identifying who would want to walk in and ask for a blessing. And then the priest, he's saying is the priest should be able to bless them in that. What it got understood as, and this is what made headlines, is that he was saying it's okay for priests to bless LGBTQ relationships or marriages, which is, again, they came out and they're like, no, that's not what he's saying. And I watched some interviews with him where he was like, no, this is a sin. This is not in the doctrine of the church. And so to be fair on that. But why does it need to be stated that you could just bless anyone?
Yeah. Is
a question. Like, you should be able to. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, can you pray for me? I'm not going to be like, are you living in sin? Like, it's going to be like, no, let me pray for you. I've had many friends who are non-Christians that I knew were non-Christians who asked me to pray for them. And I've prayed for them in whatever issues they've had. So, but it's been things of that sort, these ambiguous statements. I think Matt Fratt spoke about this as well in a video that he released today. So maybe we can get to that and see what Matt says about it. Yeah, and Matt's like as Catholic as they come.
Yeah, but that's the thing about him. What you just said is the ambiguous comments sometimes tend to make you wonder, because it seems like the church was always coming back and releasing a statement saying, no, that's not what he meant. Where everyone's like, kind of sounded like that's what he meant. Now about that specific one, you're right. He did actually mean just blessing them generally. But he's made some it's actually interesting because he, in a cool way, he doesn't actually toe the line. I mean, like, for example, he's very pro-immigration.
Yeah.
And spoke against even the U.S. government on that issues. But then he's very anti-abortion. Like, he actually said aborting your baby is like hiring a hitman.
Yeah.
So, like, stances like that, he's very conservative. He was very conservative on. But then there's other stuff where you're like, man, like, this seems very far removed from the Catholic tradition.
Well, I think just when you look at Catholics and how Catholics themselves are divided on him, that sort of tells you kind of his theological stances on things.
That's right.
Not to be accusatory, like, just you have Catholics and very conservative Catholics, individuals that are very much about Catholic doctrine, will say stuff like, well, I don't know about this guy.
Yeah.
I like two guys that I listen to, and I think you listen to as well, is Trent Horn and Matt Fratt, Pints with Aquinas. And both of these guys, I think, are very reasonable individuals. I like their thinking. They're intelligent guys. They understand Catholic doctrine very well. And then you'll hear Trent Horn, for example, released a video on this, and Trent said something interesting. He said one of the things, and he had met when he had gotten married, and he gave this really cool story about meeting the Pope and stuff. He said, one of the things I realized is that Pope Francis was a person that thought with his heart.
Yeah.
And there were situations in which it was necessary for him to think with his head, not his heart.
Yeah.
I think that's a very
It's well
interesting, well said analysis of the situation. Matt Fradd seems to be a bit more critical, I think, in his analysis in regards to being him being ambiguous instead of unambiguous. Like, come out and make a statement. Like, don't. And maybe that's one of my thoughts about it is I think because now we're analyzing a person's heart, which is very difficult to do, but because we are not that person. But we can say typically individuals that tend to be more emotional, as you know, popes aren't immune to that. Nobody's immune to that, regardless of your theology. People who tend to think with their hearts a lot more tend to be individuals that want to sort of please individuals around them.
Yeah.
And so that might be why when they get kind of into really big, kind of messy situations that there's a lot of conflict, they'll try to toe the line so everybody is pleased.
That's right.
And then that ends up being kind of a bigger mess than it should be. These are the sort of things that I've observed about him. The other thing that it could get controversial, and again, I don't want Catholics coming, well, whatever. If Catholics want to come at me, you're more than welcome to. Just let's do it reasonably. It seems to me from the outside, and I haven't done crazy research into this stuff, that he's appointed a lot of theologically liberal Catholics into places of authority and power.
That's right.
Within the Catholic Church, so I don't know whether we can use U.S. politics to speak about this. I think we can. I think there's a one-to-one kind of correlation here. For example, the President of the United States appoints judges.
Mm-hmm.
Judges make rulings on interpretation of the law. So if you get a bunch of conservatives, you're going to get a bunch of conservative rulings. If you get a bunch of liberals, you're going to get a bunch of liberal rulings. And this is not, I'm not necessarily talking about the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court especially. So I would suspect it's a similar sort of thing when you get a lot of, say, conservative cardinals and bishops and archbishops all over the Catholic Church.
Mm.
And remember, he has universal authority on these things all across the board, everywhere there are Catholics. Versus, not like it's not just in his, it's not just in the Vatican and stuff like that. So that could what's the word I'm looking for? It could have ramifications down the line. It could have ramifications in the sense of like who's going to replace him.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe you want to throw some ideas out there.
And messaging, just the messaging of the Catholic Church, it can change. And when we say conservative, again, it's not a political institution, but conservative would be more traditional, like upholding traditional Catholic doctrines. Where the problem I have, Art, with kind of like a supreme leader, for lack of better words, over an entire religion, is that you always have to. There's two ways you can look at it. One, you can say we don't want to. I guess I want to say this in a kind way. When there's a supreme leader, you always have to kind of make sure if he kind of errs in something he's saying, where you have a way to constantly correct that and say what he meant was this, what he meant was that. So that's my problem with controversial figures like this, where as a Catholic you always have to be, you can say the Pope is completely in error, but that would just bring up another thing we talked about before we started the stream, which is, are all popes the people that God wanted to put in that position within his positive will? I think that's the word Catholics use.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of misconceptions amongst Protestants when it comes to this conversation. And so I prefer allowing Catholics to speak on these subjects and explain kind of what's going on. Because I've heard, again, the two guys that I respect a lot, Matt Fradd and Trent Horn, both speak about, hey, pray for the Cardinals so that they make the right decision. Because it could be that they don't make the right decision. So it doesn't seem to me that it's Catholic teaching that that whoever becomes the next pope is the person that God wants to be the next pope, which is very interesting, because then this individual ends up being the head of the universal, Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Now, I'm thinking about this. As I'm saying this, I'm processing this. So let's think Old Testament. Let's think. I'm giving a lot of grace here to like Catholic thinking on this. So let's say like Aaron, the high priest. And then who are the individuals that follow in the footsteps of Aaron and become high priest? Very clearly, there are individuals that are high priests that are not from God. Clearly, like we would say God didn't want those people. But it could also have been, in a way, the people had gotten so bad where it was a part of God's judgment of like handing them over to these bad leaders. I suppose whether there's a similar sort of thinking amongst Catholics, like it could get really bad. We could be in such a bad position as a church, as the, not being very faithful as the bride of Christ or something like that, where we end up getting leadership that's bad and corrupt. I suppose there might be some, but like, don't quote me on that. But I want to play this clip of Matt speaking on this. This is Matt Fradd, Pints with Aquinas. Here's what he says.
Whoever the cardinals select is definitely who it should have been, that this was God's positive will. This isn't church teaching, and this is something that Pope Benedict XVI even sort of rebuked slightly in saying, no, but we do trust that even though that whoever the cardinals select next, that God can write straight with crooked lines. And so this might be a way for us to sort of make an act of faith in God and say, my God, I don't know why you do the things that you do or why you're doing the things that you are doing, but I trust that you're victorious. And even if I can't see how all of this wraps up, I surrender to you.
What do you think about Matt's kind of reasoning there, Tom?
Yeah, I watched this video, and actually this was the first video that popped up in the morning for me. And I think he's actually being very reasonable here. He's kind of coming as kind of in a gracious way. He's looking at this whole thing in a gracious way. And I thought all Catholics were going to come out this morning and say we love the Pope and stuff like that and blah blah blah. And it hasn't been like that. I don't know. Maybe because it's what you said, Art. Maybe it's because they were expecting this to happen and they've kind of like practiced what to say. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not an unexpected sort of passing.
Yeah,
he's up there in age. I just think Francis was a very divisive individual in the Catholic Church. Now, again, it's not always a bad thing to be divisive. Like I think, as a Protestant, we as Protestants we'd probably say amen to that. Like it's not always bad being divisive. The question is, what are we dividing towards or with or about?
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes there are situations in which it is necessary for folks to divide. It's absolutely necessary. But again, like, so what are the conversations I think that have come up within Catholicism? Because there's definitely an arm within the Catholic Church that's sort of trying to rebrand Catholicism.
Yeah, that's right. It kind of goes to what you were saying when you said, could it be the judge? Let's say, guys, I'm not saying this, by the way. I'm just throwing out random hypotheticals here. But could it be, when you said it could be God's judgment to have a bad pope or a bad leader or whatever, bad high priest? But that's not how a lot of the Catholics would view it, in my opinion. So you have a very large amount of liberal Catholics. I would actually say I would say this at least confidently. The majority of Catholics in leadership in the United States and like politics would probably be on the liberal side.
Yeah, okay, so you're not talking about individuals in the church, you're talking about
No,
politicians
I'm talking
who
about
are Catholics.
Politicians, yeah.
Yeah.
So the overall sentiment about this Pope Francis hasn't been that because of his ambiguity and stuff like that. He's been this. It's been like, hey, you know what? He was a great Pope. He was good with immigration. He was good with taking the church to a more progressive place. He was good with putting in women in positions of authority that they weren't in before. He was good in this. He was good in that. But he also had some of his traditionalist stuff, like being anti-abortion. He didn't fully make it in that area. Yeah. He still kind of was like a patriarchal figure, and he still had some of that in there. So it's like really weird. They view his more progressive things as going in the church going in a positive direction, where the statement you made would be like, oh, that could potentially be like judgment. But it doesn't seem like, I'm generalizing here. There's Catholics like the brother you just shared and Trent Horn that are very good with these talking about these topics and being fair-minded. But it's not, I guess my response is, it's not necessarily like the Pope going towards progressivism is the Catholic members are looking at it like, oh my God, this is a terrible thing. Yeah. Or judgment. You know what I mean?
Well, true, but I my assumption would be that probably some conservative Catholics might be thinking in that direction. It's very interesting that Francis, ethnically Francis is Argentinian, and came out of Argentina. I think he's the first South American Pope, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say yes, and people. I think
you're right. Yeah,
people can fact check me on that. But for anybody who understands theological developments in South America, it's important to realize that there are forms of theology in South America that are borderline socialist communist, if not fully. And they go by various names. I again, I'm speaking in like Protestant circles and stuff like that, but I wonder how much some of that stuff has impacted Catholic doctrine in South America, and whether Francis was just working out his theological beliefs. So like being pro-immigration and stuff like that. Yeah. Like it's no accident to me that he would be that, considering that he's coming out of South America.
Yeah.
And then bringing that onto like a global stage and having now the power and authority to speak on the matter, to influence matters, to appoint individuals that would speak on those matters, that are like-minded. Like it goes a long way. Now, the individual that follows him would be very interesting in my mind.
Yeah.
Because if you get someone who is more liberal theologically, generally the way this works is you get someone who's like kind of borderline liberal, and then the step down, the individual after them is like pushes that a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then you get into like a way more liberal stance. So maybe the way that people can think about this in the American context is like compare John F. Kennedy, who was a Democrat president, and Joe Biden, who was a Democrat president. And then see whether these two individuals would agree with each other.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing with Republicans and see where it's going. Trump is, in my mind, just shifting here. Like, I think Trump individually, at least, I don't know whether with his policies or not, like he seems like pretty liberal.
Yeah.
There are things he says that in previous generations, if Republican presidents were to say, we'd be like, "Oh, this guy's liberal" and stuff like that. And we're uncomfortable with it, definitely. But that could be one of the negative things, is that the one after him could be even more liberal than him because he was appointed by him, and then he's going to push it a bit more. If they go with a more conservative guy than him, now that guy's got to reverse all the decisions. This guy's like, how many bishops and priests and stuff like that, or cardinals, does that guy have to like get rid of? Because Francis had gotten rid of a lot of people. So those are like interesting conversations to me.
Yeah.
That like I got to pay attention to and then listen to Catholics who are invested into the conversation.
Have you seen the Conclave, the movie Conclave?
I have not yet.
You would find
Probably
it really
a time.
interesting.
Oh yeah.
Has a crazy plot, guys. If you haven't watched Conclave, I would recommend watching it. It's very good, powerful acting, and then throws you off with the craziest plot twist, probably in, I don't know, film history over the last 10 years or whatever. So you guys should check that out. But it kind of goes through this whole process and how, again, it's a very secret process, the conclave, the election of the Pope. That's what they call it. And it's funny because some of the candidates are like 79, 80 years old, and they can't vote. A cardinal over 80 can't vote for Pope. So it's like really weird. They could technically, I guess, be elected, but not be able to vote for themselves. So it's a really interesting process. You guys should watch it. But Art, I was going to say, do you think, looking at it through history, since you're a history buff, to me, it always seems like the center line shifts one direction. So like what's center now, what's moderate now will become, or what's liberal now will become what moderate is in like 10, 15 years until there's a reform. And then whatever that's in, whether it's in politics, religion, and then that reform will like recenter it to somewhere else, whether it's gone too far right, too far left. But the problem is that, do you think that the Catholic Church, look, I know we're not experts on this, but we can talk about it. They talk about us all the time. Do you think the Catholic Church would need to go through some kind of reform to bring back that traditionalism, or do you think it's not that far gone as far as, where it's been headed towards?
Oh man, I think there could be a split in the Catholic Church. It would not take a lot to split the Catholic Church between very conservative Catholics and then not so conservative Catholics. It really wouldn't take much. I would say it would take 1 to 3 decisions. Let's just say, and we're just going to imagine here, okay? Maybe in like a month or two, we'll be sitting here and saying, see, we told you. I don't know. Suppose the new Pope comes in and says, women can be priests, and I'm okay with gay marriage, monogamous gay marriage. I think that splits the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Two decisions.
What would their theological response to that be? Where does the Pope's authority... So if the Pope is speaking on church doctrine, he's infallible, right? That's what I understand. If he's...
So it's not everything he says, but
So could there be a scenario where he says, I'm pro-gay marriage, but then he's still upholding the doctrines of the Catholic Church? Because that would be very weird.
It seems to me that he could make a statement of like, personally, I'm for this, but church doctrine teaches this.
Yeah, but you would have to explain your personal position doctrinally.
Because if you're a good Catholic, you subjugate yourself to Catholic teaching.
And that's what they do. Props to all the Catholic apologists I listen to. They're really good at that.
Yeah.
But Protestants have a misconception of Catholics. Like, they're all those like old ladies outside of like clinics with like rosary and stuff like that. But there's really, really intelligent people I listen to out there. By the way, not just on Catholic versus Protestant issues, just random stuff. Abortion stuff, cultural stuff, how to respond. But yeah, that would be really weird. So if a scenario, okay, let me give you a hypothetical that is sounding less like a hypothetical each day. But let's say this next Pope comes in and he goes, the first thing he does is he says, you know what? I think that the Catholic Church should become more accepting of homosexuality, and we should affirm, or at least I affirm, gay relationships in my personal life. I'm okay with that. What happens next?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm pretty sure there might be a way for the Cardinals to get rid of him, which would be very interesting considering the Cardinals elected him. Like, is there a way for you, and Catholics can, you can fact check this stuff, but is there a way for a Pope to kind of invalidate their own authority and essentially could be run out of a job?
Yeah.
Fired by everybody else. I don't think, contrary to popular opinion or something like that, I don't think popes just come out with statements by themselves. They have PR people, they have other cardinals look through their stuff. They essentially have I think they have like sort of a cabinet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right. That are gonna cross check and fact check their ideas before it gets released to the public. And there'll probably be pushback. If the guy's like coming out and saying, look, let me put it in religious terms. I think that God is telling us to get with the times. We gotta rectify the bad decisions we've made in the past as Catholics, for example. And then he comes out and says, this is something I would support, actually. He comes out and says, I think priests ought to have the right to get married. Right. And then it's like, wow, this is cool. This guy's finally doing something that we should have done a long time ago. Look at the Orthodox, look at the Orientals, look at the Protestants who were like, no, it's okay for priests to get. And again, leave it up to people's choice. Some priests might say, no, we don't want to get married. We're good with this. They have a personal decision to make, but at least they're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
And then it could be like, we got to get on with the times. We got to, so women can go into the priesthood now. So like full on egalitarianism. And I'm sure there's individuals in the Catholic Church that'd be like, yes, we've been waiting for this because we've thought this is actually what the Bible teaches, depending on however they come to those conclusions. And I'm not saying the next necessary step after that would be a full-on affirmation of like same-sex marriages or something like that. But suppose this guy does that.
Yeah.
It's going to be very messy.
So when Francis became Pope, actually, man, I've been up since like 5 a.m. watching stuff on the Pope. And I've always been interested, by the way, in the Catholic Church, especially in the last 5-6 months. But a lot of women actually had the hopes that he would make a statement like that when he became Pope. And there was some orders, I forgot what they're called. I don't want to butcher it, but something like the Second Order of Mary or some name like that, where they were actually like pushing for that to happen, for him to go the route you were saying with women in leadership. But here's something that people forget, and Protestants sometimes forget. We forget is that there's a lot of tradition in the Catholic Church that these guys like Pope Francis have gone through. Like they really love the process, the system, the way it works, and they, whatever their theological leanings are, they really respect that system, and they've kind of worked in order to be at the level they're at in order to be elected. So it would be really random for some guy to have, like respected the system, the Catholic Church, all that stuff, and then get there and be like, I'm going to say all the opposite things of everything this institution has stood for. It could happen, by the way.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if there's going to be this like crazy Pope that comes and starts going like, gay people are awesome, women can be in leadership, and have all these crazy. Maybe it happens. Who knows? Oh, but hey, isn't there some kind of weird like prophecy about
Gosh,
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
About like either Francis was the last Pope or the one before him, or what? There's something weird like that.
We're about to go down the. Oh gosh.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up.
No, it's okay. There is, right? Like, let me see if I can. What are those guys that always talk about like the red heifer kind of?
You guys are about to be red pilled right now.
Oh, no, you're not. You're about to go into cuckoo land. Okay, this is AI stuff. So we'll pull this up.
Oh, someone said it. Peter the Roman? Is that
Yeah,
what it's
so
called?
so
Okay.
Peter the Roman is thought to be the next, or sorry, the last pope. So here's the prophecy. It says the prophecy of the popes attributed to Saint Malachi suggests there will be 112 popes before the end of the world. While the prophecy details each pope with a short descriptor, you can pull this up and look at it. I'll try to do it in a second. Most scholars believe it's a pseudepigraphic fabrication written shortly before its publication. The prophecy concludes with a pope named Peter the Roman, whose pontificate will precede the destruction of the city of Rome.
So which pope is Francis?
Let's see. I've heard 112, but
No
also
way.
heard 111.
There's no way he's
Which pope is Francis?
guys. If he's 112, I'm leaving the stream.
According to Saint Malachi, let's see. Pope Francis is not directly named in Saint Malachi's prophecy of the popes, which is a collection of short descriptions. The prophecy describes 28 popes. Let's see. Well, this one doesn't say it. I think he's 111, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, here, prophecy of the popes. This is.
Oh man.
Oh man, you're making me go down to like. Okay, here they are.
If that number goes to
Benedict is okay. I told you you're gonna get me in trouble.
there's no way.
Okay, so this is gonna get. We're not gonna clip this, guys. This is just for the heck of it. So, without going into details, but the glory of the olive essentially is the 111th pope, which was Benedict. Okay. It says proponents of the prophecy generally try to draw a connection between Benedict and the Olivetan order to explain this model. Benedict's choice of papal name is after Saint Benedict of Nursia, founder of the Benedictine order, of which the Olivetans are one branch. Other explanations make reference to him being a pope dedicated to peace and reconciliations, of which the olive branch is the symbol. Now, 112th pope, which is Peter the Roman. Now, the crazy thing is, Francis's name is not Peter. He's not Roman. He's from Argentina and stuff like that. Okay, and this is where I'm going to get into cuckoo land a little bit. But Pope Benedict didn't die when the next pope was elected. Francis wasn't elected because the pope died. Okay, he stepped down as pope. So I don't know whether some of these guys who are conspiratorial in their thinking might come at it and say, aha, Francis was never really a true pope because Benedict didn't die. So we're not going to count Francis as the 112th pope. Benedict is the 111th pope, and we haven't had a 112th pope yet, which again would be really weird, but this is how the way conspiracy theories work. And then I think the crazy thing is there are two guys that are up for being pope that are named Peter.
Yeah, this will blow your mind. The first one is Pietro Parolin. Guess where he's from?
Italy.
And
So he's Roman.
And he's currently one of the top four, but he's at number 1 on the Guardian
Oh,
on this
wow.
list. Yikes.
Who's the other one?
The other one is Peter Turkson. He's from Ghana. He's 76.
Okay.
So Peter Turkson, this is the weird part. Peter Turkson is a moderate. He's been an advocate for social justice, environmental issues, aligning with some of Pope Francis' key concerns. And Cardinal Parolin is actually a moderate too. I thought he was.
There's another Peter, according to the chat. Peter Erdo.
Yes, I've heard of him too. But he's not from Italy. He's a Hungarian.
So we have one guy.
And he's a conservative.
But look, he's from Hungary. Like people will do weird stuff because if that guy gets elected, it's like, but it's a part of the old Roman Empire and all this stuff, right?
Could be, yeah.
You guys are gonna see so many videos of people coming up with this stuff. But there's another thing on top of that, Tom, is that regardless of who gets elected, they might choose the name Peter.
Ooh.
Because they pick names.
That way, if some random pope gets elected and just for the sake of being a troll, calls himself like Peter of Rome or something like that would be an epic troll. And he's just like a normal guy, normal pope.
So, how many Italians are there in there?
I see. Oh, well, this is just from the Guardian list, which is really good with this stuff. I see 2 Italians on this list. There's actually I forgot his name. I think it's Robert Serra. He's not on this list or something Serra. He's somewhere in Africa. But this guy would probably be the most conservative choice. But I think the reason they're not leaning towards him is because he's super old. He's 79 right now.
Yeah, this guy was old when he got elected.
Yeah.
And it could be that they pick a younger. Like, I don't know what are the things that actually go into picking a pope, like the discussions that are had. Like, hey, guys, let's pick someone who will be pope for the next 20, 30 years. Or it could be, why don't we pick someone who's like transitional? Like, a lot of people thought Francis was going to be a transitional pope. They thought like 4 years or something like I remember these conversations happening. That he'll get there and then we'll get a more younger conservative or something like that. Oh man. Yeah, so that's kind of the conspiratorial craziness, man. I wanna see.
There's a cardinal. I saw this morning. It had nothing to do with the conversation, but it was so funny. There's a cardinal who some people have in other lists as possibility. His name is Cardinal. He's from Italy too. His name is Cardinal Pizzabella. Isn't that such a cool name?
No, are you serious?
Yeah, no, I'm serious. He's actually in he's in some of the lists as a potential.
His name was Cardinal what?
Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzabella.
Pizzabella. Oh my gosh. There he is.
Yeah, that's so cool. Pier Battista Pizzabella.
Oh, his archdiocese is in Jerusalem. Interesting.
I think this guy might be conservative as well. I'm not sure.
Very interesting. From Jerusalem. Hey, so like overall, man, I think to all our like Protestant friends, this matters because this actually these things impact Protestant Catholic dialogue.
Yeah.
If you get a pope that's more like ecumenical, who's like, let's talk to Protestants, let's see where we can agree on. Like, remember, Vatican II is not that far, like we're not that far removed from Vatican II.
Yeah.
In regards to Catholics coming out and saying, no, I think, we're pretty much in agreement on like Lutheran definitions of justification. Like these are statements that have been made. So quite often one of the issues that I run into with Protestants, my fellow Protestants, is they're arguing stuff that people argued about in the 1500s because they read, Calvin and Luther or something like that. Times have changed. Doctrine has changed. Churches have made decisions that have made them better or worse. Like, think about the mainline denominations that are out there today. And almost all of them are in decline. Almost all of them are dying.
That's right.
Because they become ultra liberal and stuff like that. So, sorry, man, Anthony's comment is so golden here. He's got an AC Milan badge for all the soccer fans. And he said the Antichrist will be from Milan. Specifically, he's an Inter Milan fan. Oh, God.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
Anthony's letting his soccer, convictions overrule his Catholic convictions or something. Yeah, so like these things could matter in regards to like a dialogue between Protestants. Because imagine if you get a really conservative guy. Sometimes Protestants go, it'd be really cool to get a conservative guy.
Yeah.
But imagine you get a really conservative Catholic guy who goes, all Protestants are going to hell. Like, that would be interesting that people don't think about.
You're right.
And then that would even, like, doctrinally, how do Catholics deal with this? And he goes, we're the one church. I'm the head of that church. Orthodox people are heretics. Protestants are heretics. Orientals are heretics. Like, that'll cause a lot of confusion and conversations. There are ecumenical groups, religious leaders that meet together, folks. If you guys aren't familiar, like the World Council of Churches have Protestants, Orthodox, Orientals, Catholics. Like, they meet together and discuss things. And it's not some weird cabal or something like that. Relax. And so, like, how does that get impacted? So here's the thing. Maybe we should talk about is that there's this myth. I think, and I'll say it's a myth. 7 hours ago, there's a video that says "End times warning amid Pope's death."
I love these videos, man.
Oh my gosh! Let the guy die.
This poor guy can't even die in peace.
I saw someone on my Facebook saying, "Hey, my Reformed friends, stop saying the Pope's going to hell. He just died." Like, and I was like, I can't believe. Like, I don't have any friends that have posted anything like that. I haven't seen anything like that. But, bro, like, just have some decent humanity and respect for someone who passes away. Like, forget whatever. Like, someone's died, and then you shouldn't be like bragging over that. If you actually believe someone's going to hell, your heart should be broken over that. Like, do you have the heart of Jesus? You know, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how long I have wanted to gather you under my wing. Like, is that your mind? That, like, you're not rejoicing over this. It's just weird to me, man. Sometimes it's just,
So this is interesting. It says the process in picking the Pope is not infallible according to the Catholic Church.
Okay.
Meaning a poor pope can still be elected, but the Spirit is believed to influence and inspire the cardinals in choosing a shepherd suited to the church's needs. So I heard this morning on one of the 40 videos I watched, I heard that what the response to saying, okay, so someone like me, a Protestant, would ask, especially a Calvinist, would ask, okay, so if the Spirit is leading it, then how could they choose a wrong pope if it's such an important position? The response from this Catholic was that the cardinals would, in that instance, be rejecting the guidance of the Spirit. Yeah. So I guess that's a good answer. But for me, it's like,
I mean, look, it's a consistent answer.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't, because we want to be apologetically minded, considering what we do here on this channel, is somebody can be consistent and be wrong.
Yeah.
And let me just bring it into conversations about apologetics material, right? Like, somebody like Alex O'Connor can develop a argument against God's existence. Say, like, one of the things Alex is known for is an argument from a non-resistant non-believer. And there's a consistency in his argument. You can bring about arguments about the problem of evil and develop a certain kind of consistency in it. And then I can say, wow, you're being consistent in your argumentation, but you're wrong.
Yeah.
And they would say the same thing and they have the right to, hey man, I get your argument of, you know, like, say the design argument, like a teleological argument. Everything that appears to be designed has a designer. The universe appears to be designed, therefore the universe has a designer, therefore God exists, so on and so forth. And they'll be like, cool, but there are exceptions to that. So you're being consistent in your logical deduction, but the universe is one of the things that appears to be designed, but it doesn't have a design or whatever, right? And they go, you're wrong, but you're being consistent. This is where it really bugs me when it comes to the online conversations. People do not know how to disagree properly. They don't know why a Catholic guy that you can respect, I can respect, whomever can respect, can come out and say, look, here's what our doctrine on this issue is. We think the office is the thing that God is guiding. And even if a bad guy was in that office, that doesn't necessarily mean God's abandoned everything. God can still use them for his purposes. And even though we believe that the cardinals will be led and are being led by the Spirit, we still allow for some places in which people can reject and resist the Spirit's guiding and end up making poor decisions. As a matter of fact, they might go back and say, here's an example of a bad decision they made in whatever, 1232, let's just say. And then still like keep that tension there and be consistent in it.
That's right.
Now, I don't think, I mean, even like when we get into like, what is the Pope? The Pope is essentially the Bishop of Rome. And then you had other bishops. You've had other bishops throughout church history. You've had the Bishop of Constantinople, the bishops of Antioch, Bishop of Alexandria. And the Bishop of Rome became elevated and became the head. That's the other title for the Pope, by the way, is the Bishop of Rome.
Mm.
And could be the wrong person. Could make poor decisions. I was just curious to know, and I have no answer to this, because I don't know the inner workings, as to whether they can get rid of a Pope.
No, they can't.
So once he's in, the only way he can be gone is if he resigns.
Yeah, so
Which, like, Benedict was the first guy in I don't know how long to resign.
yeah, there's no kind of a process of impeachment.
Yeah.
What they do, and they don't use legal means. So what they do is they use persuasion, personal persuasion. Like, hey, you're not. It would be something like, hey, you're not following. You're not doing the things you should be doing as a pope. We recommend you step down.
Yeah, but when was the last time a pope stepped down?
Probably
Other than Benedict.
Benedict. I don't know. Let's see. When was the last time?
Gregory the 12th in 1415. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. To help end the schism, paving the way for the Council of Constance.
Brother, 1415.
Yeah. Ooh.
So what Benedict did was insane. Because it hadn't been done in a very, very long time. To see that happen kind of consecutively, right, or semi-consecutive or whatever, like close to each other in a matter of 30, 40 years would be insanity.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were against Benedict stepping down. So think about it. Look at this. He died at age of 95. Benedict died at 95 years old in December of 22. He stepped down in 2013. So if he hadn't stepped down, he would have been the Pope for another 9 years.
Yeah. And that probably means Francis wouldn't have been Pope today.
Correct.
He would have been much, much older at that point.
Yeah.
What he is.
Well, he was 88, right?
Yeah.
I mean, 2-3 years ago, he'd have been
yeah.
85 years old. We wouldn't have had it, Francis. So
what? So when you say this is a Catholic thing, you want to hear mainly from Catholics, right? But since you made another point about the election of a new pope, even though they don't view it as like a political election, but you know what I'm.
Yeah, but the pope has political power. In my opinion.
So since the pope could potentially say things that you mentioned about Protestants, Orthodox, that could be that could affect us technically, in at least a general way. What should we do? Like, should we talk about these things? What should our response be? Should we care about the process? What parts of the process should we care about? Should we maybe be more researched on these topics? Or should we kind of take the route of, I know you don't like this, but I'm asking the question of what is the Pope to us? What is the Catholic Church to us? We're not even sure if we believe that, like the Pope is saved or whatever, or it's even a legitimate position. So why should we care about that process? Why should we care about a good, I guess, from a Protestant that has a negative view of the Catholic Church? I'm not saying me, I'm saying generally speaking. Why would you want the next Pope to be a good Pope? Like, you would want the next Pope.
For the same reason I would want the President of the United States to be a good president, or the President of...
No. The way I'm asking is, like, for example, if the next Pope comes out and is like super liberal and whatever, you could just say, like, I told you so. Like, Catholicism is just, it's...
Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't make it an issue of like Catholicism.
Yeah.
My issue is I'm actually very different, I would say, from the way a lot of people think about church governance. I just don't think there is a biblical model of having one guy lead the entire thing. And I know the arguments will come up with, upon you, I'll build the church, so on and so forth. But I think when the New Testament speaks about elders, that could be applied in all sorts of ways, in my mind. Like, meaning you can have that as a local level with like just a local congregation that has elders. You can also apply that into a more kind of wider arena of, let's just say, bishops, archbishops, who are ruling a larger group denominationally. I'm actually okay with that. As long as, for me, as long as there's a plurality of individuals leading, say, the denomination.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And so I'm not sure how much of that happens. It could be, and I've heard this from Catholics say, well, the Pope is more of like a elder brother amongst brothers. But I don't think that's like historically very truthful, because at times there's been like very domineering kind of popes. And then maybe at times there's been guys who've shared the power, but it's been their personal decision to share the power rather than this is what the job requirement is or something like that. And so I would prefer for something like that. And I care about these things because I think at the end of the day, we're going to have conversations about what the Bible teaches on the subject. Like Jesus telling, that conversation with Peter, does that mean that Peter is the first pope and then everyone we have subsequent to him are sitting in his chair? I mean, the chair of Saint Peter.
Yeah.
This is the Catholic argument. So there are apologetic themes that run through this that I think Protestants should be able to have conversations about. Say, like, hermeneutically, you ought to know what's going on in Scripture and whether it's teaching that, whether it's not. Probably would have to look at your history. Why are there divisions, say, amongst Catholics and Orthodox and Orientals? What about during history when you had two popes? You had one in France and you had the other one in Rome. Like, why was there a division amongst Catholics?
Yeah.
At that point, like, what's going on? I would hope that we'd be having these conversations and then learning and hearing proper responses to that. Because again, like, if you have a French pope who's in support of the French monarchy versus you have an Italian pope who's in support of whatever monarchy, maybe the Italian or maybe the Spanish or something like that. And then they're going at it, where the French were essentially like, well, you're not with us, we're going to create our own pope.
Yeah.
Right? And then now you have these dual popes. That's a division in the church. How does that happen? Who were the cardinals that did that?
Yeah, and then how do you get it all back to normal?
Well, I think, I don't know whether, you said it was the Council of Constance.
Yeah, to help end the schism.
Yeah, I want to know what the schism is. Because I think the schism...
It's called the Western Schism.
Yeah, but so part of it, I think, is because of multiple popes.
Yeah. Man, there's so many things that...
So the council ended the Western Schism by deposing or accepting the resignation of the remaining papal claimants and by electing Pope Martin V. Did you know there was a guy named Pope Martin?
No.
I didn't. The fifth. It was the last papal election to take place outside of Italy. This is significant, man. The council, check this out, this is crazy. Excuse me. The council also condemned Jan Hus as a heretic and facilitated his execution, and it ruled on issues of national sovereignty and the rights of pagans and just war in response to conflict between the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, the Kingdom of Poland, and the Order of the Teutonic Knights. Now tell me how these things aren't political as well, or haven't been at least.
Yeah, very political. More political than politics.
Yeah, if you haven't looked into Jan Hus, folks, I highly recommend you look into Jan Hus. Just a little bit about Jan Hus. Sometimes also called John Hus, but referred to, let's see, Jan Hus was a Czech theologian and philosopher who became a church reformer and the inspiration of Hussitism, a key predecessor to Protestantism, and a seminal figure in the Bohemian Reformation. Hus is concerned to be the first church reformer.
Wow.
Even though some designate the theorists John Wycliffe, his teachings had a strong influence most immediately in the approval of Reformed Bohemian religious denominations and over a century later on Martin Luther. Jan Hus came before Luther. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gavin Ortland has a video on Jan Hus.
Gavin Ortland also put out a video today.
No way.
Yeah.
That's one I would want to watch.
I think. Might be getting my videos mixed up, but that I think I was talking about the other video I asked you. I'd love for you, change of subject here for a second, but I'd love for you to react to that one of these days.
So Christian apologetics just got challenged by Rhett and Alex.
Yes.
Is the video. And the video is on Alex O'Connor's channel. I would want to respond to that. Maybe I can do that the rest of the week at some point whenever I stream. But I would have to watch the video and then get some timestamps and then be able to respond to that.
Yeah, because they were Rhett and Link is I think the YouTube name.
Rhett and Link.
Yeah, they were very, very kind of evangelical Christians. And then they both deconstructed, and they had it. There was this was going out about a year ago where people were talking about these guys and their deconstruction, and some of the stuff is. Here's what bothers me, and
did you watch the one with Alex O'Connor?
Yeah. So I've watched previous ones with them too.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were actually with Bill Maher or somebody like that too. But what's weird is their evangelical experiences were like. They were at one point in this Alex O'Connor one, they're like, people would come to our church that would be like experts on evolution, like either general members or people who church, and they'd be like, yeah, there's no way you're going to find out in the next few years, scientists are going to come out and say evolution was completely false. And his stuff is like he was saying like evangelicals are very cringe at that kind of stuff. But I was like, I don't know, man, not my surrounding. Like, I don't know what church these people go to where everything is so cringe. Like, we don't talk about evolution in that way. Like when we have conversations about evolution, the Big Bang Theory, biological stuff, like we have serious conversations about them. And he was saying how I'm kind of going there now. I love that video, by the way. But he was saying something like, I'll just let you respond to it when you respond to it. Why am I doing it?
Let me see something actually.
But it was very interesting.
We might be able to pull up like a
short version of it.
No.
Summary.
Chapters.
Oh.
Hey, Chad, how we doing? Everybody good? If you're good, drop a 1 in the comment. If you like Tom on this stream and that you think Tom brings about a side of me that you haven't seen before, drop the number 1 in the comment section. And then let me know how that's going for you. Let's see.
Yeah, this is a very interesting talk.
Okay, there are timestamps. Deciding to talk about religion, Rhett's Christian activism in college, Rhett's certainty that Christianity was true, does hell exist, how Rhett's Christianity began to crack, how evolution shook Rhett's faith.
That's the part I was just talking about.
Very unnecessary what that would happen, but okay. Jesus and the resurrection, double standards in Christian apologetics. Ooh. How Rhett's deconstruction impacted his life. I'm interested in that. Rhett's relationship to Christianity today, the risk of speaking publicly on theology. Well, I'll frankly say there is no risk if you're a Christian leaving Christianity. And if you think there is a risk, try being a Muslim and talking about anti-Islam stuff. Then you realize there's a risk.
So part of what Gavin talks about in his kind of
somebody said he brings out my soft side.
So something Gavin talks about is and Gavin actually agrees with is his name Rhett?
Yeah.
I messed him up with their YouTube.
Yeah, it's Rhett.
names. Well, about Rhett is like he says he agrees that Christians sometimes don't look at these issues that come up with grace, and we've talked about this. You've talked about this.
He's right. Gavin's right.
Yeah, Christians are not gracious. That's what Rhett says. But no, I mean, Rhett says this, and then Gavin agrees with him that it's kind of like when a topic comes up that's a little tough, either socially or whatever's going on, Christians tend to just be like, no, man, those guys are just stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. And he's saying, like, that's not the responses I needed. I needed more gracious responses where the church can reply to these things in a better, more constructive way. Yeah, of course I voted Jack. I'm going to vote for myself. I'm not over 80. I can still vote for myself. I'm not over 80. That's a reference to cardinals over 80 not being able to vote for Pope.
I'm going to jump to the double standard in Christian apologetics. I'm curious to know.
Right.
That's 111.
Shame for a guy that looks like Jesus.
Let me actually test something else. Let's see.
And come on, Alex, did you have to release this on Easter Sunday?
Yeah, of course.
Why I left Christianity.
Because Alex knows how to work YouTube. Why is this thing still loading?
God is not allowing this video to play.
It's just like buffering.
Penetrating investigation into the
He's got a good voice too.
Yeah, they're very popular.
historical circumstances is what's going to make it click and be like, oh, it did happen.
Mm-hmm.
I looked under the last rock of history and I found the resurrection. Like, it doesn't seem like God intended for that to be the way. If
That's right.
this is clearly some sort of, this is a revelation. This is like, this is a secret. This is like God's secret information that you can choose to believe. And then your life is transformed. Like, I'm okay with people who frame it in that way. I'm like, well, I still think I think this is a psychological phenomenon. I don't believe it. I'm a skeptic in that regard, but I just find it so interesting the way that some of these apologists go so hard on trying to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you really think that that's gonna be the thing that changes somebody's mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's what Jesus was doing.
No,
Verily I say unto you, premise one.
yeah, he wasn't doing apologetics.
It doesn't work like that. It's clearly
Shots
not
fired at you.
what it's.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't. By the way, are you also confused about what he says there? I'm not sure I understand what he's saying. Initially, when I listened to this, I thought he was saying if the resurrection was this big thing that happened, it would be obvious. You wouldn't have to go try to find it somewhere. And then this time I'm listening to it, I'm hearing something else. What did you hear there?
Yeah. So apologetics is I think a development out of the necessity of speaking to people who are not the kind of immediate individuals who experience a thing. And then also they're like geographically maybe separated. So I would look at Alex and say, yeah, well, duh, Alex, Jesus is not going around telling people, let me tell you premise one. Because there are a lot of shared things. But let me put it in the way that Jesus did have a conversation with his contemporaries that would be apologetic in nature. He would read a Bible passage and say, in your hearing, this has been fulfilled. Are you saying that you're the Messiah? And then Jesus would go on and give responses to that. So I think Alex, in this conversation at least, has a very narrow definition of what apologetics is, meaning that he's talking about like modern day apologetics. And that's just not the way Christians have dealt with apologetics throughout time. The early Christian apologists, say someone like Justin Martyr, is defending why Christianity is not atheistic. It's not atheism. The early Christian apologists are arguing why Christianity ought to be a legitimate religion in the eyes of the empire, because it's an outworking of Judaism. It's a fulfillment of Judaism, and Judaism was also accepted as a legitimate religion by the empire. To think that the way we do modern apologetics with skeptics is the way that people, like the way Jesus would have done it, I'd frankly say skeptics like you didn't exist. So there was no need to do that. It's not a good argument. I think it's lousy thinking. As much as I like Alex and enjoy him, I haven't, again, watched a whole interview on this, just going off this clip. But yeah, I mean, if Reddit's saying something like, well, if you're going to appeal to mysticism and mystery and all this stuff, and I'm okay with that, well, cool, then you'd be okay with Gnosticism. But you still think it's false. But those aren't the claims of Christianity. It's not about the way we argue about these things. It's what the actual claims of Christianity are. So,
all about.
Right.
And apologetics can only take you so far. I mean, there is this idea online in particular that to be a Christian or to be religious is to essentially do natural theology, is what they call it, which is like arguing for the existence of God. Like, the whole religion discussion has become consumed with God's existence, biblical scholarship, and we forget that it's actually an assumption, and a controversial assumption, that is the approach to have to this conversation. For many people, like, natural theology is just a waste of time and an improper approach to the question of God's existence. And most people who have a religious experience will report that. Thomas Aquinas famously didn't finish the Summa Theologica, the greatest Christian metaphysician of all time. And he doesn't finish it because he's performing Mass, he's performing the Eucharist, and he has a religious experience.
Right.
And his friend or colleague or whatever is writing to him, begging him, you have to finish this, Thomas. Like, this is, you've got to finish. And he says, I can write no more. It's all straw compared to what I've seen. And
yeah, well, he had a religious experience, and so he said, compared to what I saw in this vision or whatever like that, whatever I've written doesn't even compare, which would make sense in my mind as a Christian, because it's also a humbling thing that God will do to you. I mean, you're producing the greatest theological work of all time, and it's unfinished.
Yeah.
I mean, that's look, I agree with Alex on there. I do. As a matter of fact, I'm using this to hold up my keyboard right now, but it's always in my sight. Bill Craig, in his recent book, this is volume 1, volume 2 just came out, says that one of the problems of the last, let's just say 100, 150 years, is that we have, I'm trying to find, because I've underlined this and stuff, but we have essentially turned theological commitment and discussion into this intellectual kind of sparring match. That's in my own words. And he says that's not the way we ought to do it. That is not the way we ought to do theological discourse. That's not the way we ought to do theology. And then he blames certain philosophical thoughts that crept into certain philosophical thoughts that crept into theological discourse. And he says that's the problem. So I agree. So here. I think I found this. I'm going to read a couple of sections here. He says, William Wood has called the deformations of analytic philosophical theology, that is to say, defects, which are corruptions of the very qualities that make the practice good in the first place. And then he quotes him, and he says, to the philosophical theologian, everything looks like a problem to be analyzed and resolved. And then some lines down, he says this, I think rather that the deformation endemic to analytic philosophy of religion is sterility and aridity, an overly intellectualized faith that can result in a heart that is cold toward God. See, I've underlined that. And so essentially he's saying we've come to a place in theological discourse, especially when it comes to philosophical theology, he says, where we have an overly intellectualized faith that can result in a heart that is cold toward God. Now, Bill Craig is talking about this as a believer in Christ, as a faithful believer in Christ, as a man who practices his faith, takes it very seriously. And so I would agree with that in regards to what Alex is saying, that, look, the end result of Christian theology is not just intellectually sparring, as though I know X, Y, and Z. This is partly why even online, Tom, this is also why we have so many individuals on the internet that talk about theology and do apologetics, but have very lousy character.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're in a local church. I don't think they're growing. I don't think they're developing in their faith, but they're very smart. They're very articulate. They can argue X, Y, and Z. But in regards to Christ likeness, there's no development going on. And so it's fair to ask a question. Why are you, like, if I'm looking at you as a non-believer, why am I thinking you're the most bitter, angry individual to ever walk the face of this planet?
Yeah.
And that doesn't look like Jesus. Like, you can recognize this as an unbeliever in people. And I think we have quite a bit of that stuff. Or people who are just like into arguing. Like we're trying to like up one in our knowledge. Where the Bible says, outdo one another in good works. So I agree with Alex, I think, here. The end result of Christianity is not about doing natural theology or X, Y, and Z, because some guy in 1342 who very simply put his faith in Jesus and was saved by him and didn't know how to read and write and had a very deep, profound relationship with the Lord, prayed, sought after him, lived his life in simplicity and loving his family and caring for his family and his neighbor, is way more worthwhile in my mind than any one of us who can articulate all sorts of positions but look nothing like Jesus. Also, it's not necessary. I'm working on a video on this, and I'm specifically doing a video on the Trinity on this, but it's not necessary for us to know what every single theological or philosophical explanation of a subject is in order for us to believe it. There's quite a bit of people who believe things and they don't know how to explain what it is that they believe. And I think they're completely justified in believing in that, because I don't think we'd be able to operate. As a matter of fact, I think Alex and Rhett that are sitting there have beliefs that they can't fully articulate and justify, but they believe it nonetheless. And I think they're justified in believing it. Now, I think there's good philosophy for those of us who are trained philosophically, I think can give good arguments. And that's maybe why we do need individuals that are more nuanced in their thinking and can articulate these things, because it helps the rest of us kind of be more comfortable in regards to the things that we believe in. But yeah, he's right in his criticism. So when I was at the Blessed God Summit, we actually spoke about this a little bit as a group where Alex was present, about like theology and like faith and Christianity is not just about being able to give arguments and saying, believe in God because premise 1, premise 2, premise, conclusion. And then here's another 9-step argument you have. As a matter of fact, if you want my personal opinion, I don't think that's a way Alex will become a Christian. I'm pretty convinced, and I think Alex would probably amen this, that if Alex has a spiritual experience like the one that Thomas Aquinas had, he'd become a Christian a lot faster than here are 4 arguments and then you should believe it. Again, there could be many reasons to that. But we don't all think the same sort of way. So I think God meets us where we're at. But it's a fair criticism there.
But they're also putting Christians in a tough position, like a rock in a hard place. Because,
like what?
Because if you talk more about the experiential part of your faith, like things you've experienced, then they say, well, we don't believe in that stuff. Like, you need to be able to prove to me God and your faith. And then when you try to prove it through apologetics and through reason, they go like, well, that's all that's all you're gonna do. That's all your faith is to you, like trying to prove it. So it's kind of like there's a healthy balance. I think Gavin talks about this where we have to be okay as Christians with our, like what you just said, our entire faith doesn't rest on the shoulders of these arguments that we make,
Yeah.
because so much of it is personal revelations. It's personal. It's experiences.
Yeah.
Your experiences are different from mine. And an example he gave was, for example, loving your wife. Like that can't be scientifically proven. Like you said, premise one,
Yeah.
but there are. I mean, you can explain them. I love her because this. I love her because that. But that certain connection you have with the person you love isn't something that you necessarily have to prove to people. Like it's not a. So that's an example he gave. But yeah, so it's personal to me. So I think it's important to have a healthy balance, Art, of being able to give arguments, and but then also knowing that part of the reason we have this faith is
Yeah.
because it's a personal revelation.
But here's what my challenge. I agree with you. I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily disagreeing. The issue is that what they're saying, what Alex and Rhett are saying here, that Jesus didn't go around giving arguments, is false.
Yeah.
He did go around giving arguments. His arguments come in a different form and in a different context than the one we live in. So therefore, we don't recognize it.
Yeah.
So again, when Jesus gets up in the synagogue and reads out of Isaiah 61, and he says, "In your hearing, this text has been fulfilled," he's giving an argument. When he says, if you don't believe in me, believe in the miracles that I do," he's giving an argument.
Yeah.
When he heals people and says, "Your sins are forgiven," he's giving an argument. But those are arguments that are specific to Jesus' context of a Jewish crowd. When Jesus says, "Whose son is the Messiah?" And if he's David's son, how is it David, in speaking to him, calls him Lord? That's an argument. I mean, that's a syllogism. If he's David's son, why does David call him this? David does call him this, therefore he's not David's son. He's greater than David. That's an argument. And so again, I got a book sitting here somewhere that is called, so I can pull this up because I've moved my books around a little bit. Logic and was it Logic and the Way of Jesus? Something like that. Is it there? There it is. Logic and the Way of Jesus by Travis Dickinson. I've had Travis on. We've talked about his book. And one of the things Travis does in that book is he goes through all these conversations Jesus is having and then shows us how logic is being implied, even though obviously the Bible's not a logic textbook, but how it's being implied and employed, and Jesus is making these sorts of arguments. So not only does the New Testament make arguments, notice and you can distinguish between the New Testament making arguments, say the author of the book of Hebrews making arguments, that Jesus is greater than all the angels and all that stuff, versus Jesus himself making arguments. Nonetheless, the arguments are made, except the context of the arguments are different. Yeah, I did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. That's an argument, right? What makes you impure is not what goes into your body, but what comes out of your body and from what comes out of your mouth. And from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Like, these are all arguments. They're religious arguments. They're, I would say, biblical arguments. Jesus' disciples eating on the Sabbath, and Jesus' response is, did not David go in and eat the food that was only consecrated for the high priest?
That's right.
That's an argument. So we can't be naive about it, is what I'm saying. Like, so Christians will look at this and go, oh, maybe these guys got something. They're saying, no, the context matters. Jesus is not dealing with atheists. You know why? Because atheists didn't exist. Because atheists are a recent phenomenon to the history of the world. Atheists are not the norm. They have never been the norm. Human existence, there is no society that has developed naturally in which atheism has been the dominant view. Atheism is always a working out of a religious system. People are naturally religious. And there's a biblical argument we can give to that. Like in regards to a worldview system, we can give an argument towards that. I don't think the atheists have a proper argument towards that as to why we are naturally religious.
That's right.
Because either they're going to say it's some kind of a residual effect of, evolutionary development where we weren't as sophisticated. So therefore we started doing God of the Gap stuff and saying, oh, this God did that God did that. And then so that stuff stuck around. We've sophisticated a little bit. Like that's essentially their argument. It's ignorant stuff. We're saying that because we're ignorant. Once we figure out the answer, we won't say that. How do you know that?
Yeah. So I love Nick's comment. So atheism is a form of privilege.
Yeah, I no doubt. Isn't it interesting that atheism almost always is more popular in societies where people are better off? Societies in which people are not as better off tend to be more religious. Societies in which people it's interesting that atheists will give arguments from suffering about why God doesn't exist, but people who suffer the most are not atheists.
That's a great point.
Why is that? Why is it that suffering naturally doesn't lead you to atheism in very poor suffering countries, societies?
I think they would say because it creates this false hope of
regardless
like
of what it is,
something better than this.
Okay, no. So look, they can say it creates hope. They can't say it creates false hope, because now they're bringing their own psychological views and interpretations and conclusions into the conversation. They are yet to prove that, whether it's false hope or not. This is why you come across a lot of atheists who will say, well, at least not the like new atheist types, not like the Richard Dawkins ones, who say things like, well, I'm not telling you to become an atheist. Why not?
Yeah.
Well, like Doug from Pine Creek, we've had multiple conversations, and Doug says, look, I don't tell people to leave Christianity because some people need to be Christians. Fair point. But what you're saying essentially is also, well, I know better, so therefore I'm an atheist, but some of you people who aren't as sophisticated and smart as me, it's okay for you guys to have this kind of crutch. And again, fine, but at least let's put on the table what it is that a person is saying. Big shout out here for the super chat. Thank you very much. Jaden Henderson. It's very close to Jordan Henderson, who's the former Liverpool captain. But shout out to you for letting people know that Christ is still risen. Much love, my brother. Hey, thank you very much, Jaden. Appreciate it. Christ is risen. I watched a little clip of Bill Maher, I think, having a conversation with Turning Point USA guy.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk. And then he says, why do we say it in the present? Like, because he is risen.
Yeah.
Like, he continues to be risen. He hasn't died again. But it was interesting as he was speaking about that. If you got anything, I get here and there's an instant Doug mention. That's not because you were here. It's just it's a coincidence. It's okay. If there's questions or comments you think I should react to, tell me.
Agape sent something up if you want to read that. I'm kind of way on the bottom, though.
My atheist boss?
Yeah.
Yeah. My atheist boss recently told me that he's not having these discussions with me anymore because he's now learned that even if he provides proof to me, I'll still insist to believe.
So here's a question to that, Art, I want to ask you. So something that Rhett brings up in the conversation is that Christians tend to believe in a thing and then fight to find the argumentation to kind of affirm that thing. But it's kind of unfair because atheists and stuff do that all the time. Like they're so good at doing that. But do you think that's true? And two, have you found yourself doing that, or have you been open to being challenged and accepting kind of scientific facts as they come in?
So, yes. And so what is my response? Everybody does it. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're not being objective. So I'll give you a perfect example. Is it safe for me to assume that I exist when I do any kind of thinking? Or do I need to prove first that I exist before I can do any kind of thinking? And why do I bring up this example? Well, because this is an example that's been covered in philosophy. Descartes covered this. Like, sometimes people say things and I say, again, it's okay for them to be saying this, but if you're going to have this conversation on a certain kind of level, my response is you might want to educate yourself a little more on the subject. Because Descartes' whole thing was, I'm going to doubt everything. I'm going to doubt that God exists. I'm going to assume that this is the evil demon or something like that. I'm not going to trust any authority source because there could be a whole conspiratorial thing here, and all this stuff. He gets himself down to a level where he says, well, I can't doubt my own existence because in order for me to doubt my own existence, I must exist first. So he says, I think, therefore I am. I'm a thinking being, so therefore I must exist, is the idea there. So it's safe to assume that we all need a starting point. And I kind of hold this view, Tom, that's considered like common sense philosophy, essentially.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to say, hey, man, like pass me the green bottle, and then you go,
prove it.
You go, what is green? What is green? Prove to me what green is before I can... What is a bottle? Give me a definition of a bottle. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I'm a skeptic. As though that's a good thing. I kind of look at you and say something like, hey, stop being a moron and give me the bottle sitting in front of you.
But how about things that have kind of been... Okay, so the example would be something like, let's say there's good evidence towards evolution, process of evolution, right?
Okay.
So it's that Christians, their point was in the video that because Christians have always made evolution like, oh, you're not from a monkey. Well, you think a monkey would just turn into a human being? You're going to be a monkey and then you're going to... So that's the way they think Christians view evolution. So then they're like, when some evidence comes pro-evolution, Christians are just dismissive of it, and they assume that no, evolution is false, and God created Adam and Eve, and that's the only process. So we don't care about these the evidence that's coming out on the other side.
Even if they're right.
Yeah.
Number one, that those are Christians. Those are individual Christians or groups of Christians, but like Christianity, it's not a Christianity view. For the same reason, I can give all sorts of arguments towards specific atheists or groups of atheists who function a certain way. And then they would say, but we're not for that.
Yeah.
So whatever your personal experiences are, they're valid in as much as they are your personal experiences. But who cares? If I say something like, hey, communistic atheism results in the following things. And you go, but I'm not for that. I go, it doesn't matter. These are experiences I've had of atheists being this way and treating people this way. And you say, well, atheism doesn't teach that. I go, okay. When you get Christians who are so close-minded when it comes to, say, the evolution conversation, I would say that it's fair to criticize those Christians. But don't assume that's something Christianity teaches. And so, but that was my experience. I went to a church, this and that. Okay, you went to a not so good church. Because I'll tell you this, about 2 weeks ago, I was teaching a group of high schoolers that are part of the homeschooling co-op. And we've been going through a certain book. And I said, exactly what you just said they said in that comment. Please don't make caricatures of the evolution argument. Stop saying things like we come from monkeys, because nobody believes that. Here's how it properly is understood, and here's what the dialogue is amongst Christians on that subject. So now one of those kids might say whatever, take their faith seriously, grows up and turns into a very influential individual, and then says, man, there was this really good guy that taught me how to think fairly on these subjects, and it didn't close me off to scientific research, and I've become a, I don't know, microevolutionary biologist or something like that. I don't know. And then what are they going to say? So therefore everybody should be Christians now because I treated that subject that way and that individual's become that. These arguments are so anecdotal. They're so much from people's experiences.
Yeah.
And again, your experiences are your experiences. Like, I've grown out of those experiences. Like, I remember people saying like carbon dating shouldn't be trusted. Some people still say that. And I've realized that the conversation is probably a bit more complex than that. Like, why is it that we trust them on this, and that, and not on this stuff? Well, it seems like there might be a bias there. And so how is it that I can reason through that stuff, read the material on it, decide what's a good argument, what's a bad argument, and then some of these guys deconstruct and then end up coming back and saying, but, you know, when I was 17 years old or 16 years old, my youth pastor said this. Like, how is it that I grew out of my youth pastor saying stupid stuff, and other people have grown out of it when I was a youth pastor and I said stupid stuff, and then some of these guys never grew out of it?
Yeah.
Come on.
And also it happens both ways. Like the way I can see it from like the atheistic side is, have you noticed that they'll do a crazy amount of research on the Native Americans that lived in America or something like that, some crazy research like that. But then because of their because they view, let's say, the story of Noah as being just a non-historical false event, they won't go out there and research. Like even their research isn't pointed towards those things. Because I heard this guy that was looking for the Noah's Ark or bits and pieces of it that came out recently and had a really nice documentary about it. And he was saying something like, well, the reason they're not finding it is because or finding some evidence is because they're not looking for it, because they just assume that it's a false story. My point is that they do it too, even if we are at fault for that by kind of presupposing certain things and then forcing ourselves to prove it. Even like you said, even if they could be right, still they do it all the time.
Yeah, but Tom, everybody does it.
Yeah,
and this is what I'm saying. You haven't come up with a novel argument where we're sitting there going, "Wow, we didn't know, we don't do this."
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I would argue, in order for you to be a normal, rational human being, you have to do it. Because nobody lives their life like this.
Oh.
Nobody lives their life as a complete and utter skeptic.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. The people who say, well, I'm a skeptic. No, you're not. You're only a skeptic on certain issues. You're not a skeptic when when you work and at the end of the month, your boss has to pay you and you're like, well, I'm a skeptic. I don't know whether I did the work or not.
That's right.
You're not. Or your boss is like, hey, does your job exist? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it was a dream you had.
Yeah.
You haven't really come into work because I'm a skeptic. It just doesn't exist. I know I'm being a bit like facetious here. But when they like try to come off as if this form of skepticism is the way they live their life, it's not the reality of the situation. It just is not. I'm going to jump into some questions here. I'm going to put myself on. So big shout out to the super chat again from Jaden. Appreciate it. How do you practice following your beliefs to their logical end in challenging circumstances or when intrusive thoughts come? I've been thinking through this myself and would love to hear from y'all. How do you practice following your beliefs to their logical end? In challenging circumstances. Look, man, this is a bit difficult because I would want to know like actual situations, because I don't think most people actually live that way. I don't think most people follow their logical their beliefs to their logical ends in challenging circumstances. I think quite often people kind of chug it out the window. So this is why you'll see atheists in challenging situations say something like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened," or "God, please help me." Like, what happened to your atheism, man? And to be fair, quite often when you see Christians going through challenging situations, instead of actually stopping and praying and seeking God on the matter, they try to solve the situation themselves. So it happens on both ends. Now, the way you do it is, I mean, your answer is in your question, essentially. How do you practice this? You practice it. You do it in all the simpler and smaller stuff, and you do it enough, and it becomes second nature, so that whenever you have challenging situations, that's what your immediate reaction is to that situation. In regards to intrusive thoughts, I think the Bible just teaches us to control our thoughts, and we have a control over all thoughts. And when intrusive thoughts come in, you battle them and you deal with them appropriately. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Thanks for the super chat again. I appreciate it. You good? What do both of you think is the most difficult inter-Christian topic to discuss among brothers and sisters? Ooh. I'm going to bring Tom back in for this. Tom. Oh, you're getting your headphones in. Okay, let me...
Sorry, guys. I have a tooth infection, so I realized my
oh, that was your antibiotic.
Yeah, that's my
alarm.
Antibiotic alarm that went up. I wish I brought it with me. I didn't want to awkwardly leave the stream, but thanks for that. Yeah, I've been having a lot of tooth pain. What was the question again? What are some...
what do you think is the most difficult inter-Christian topic to discuss among brothers and sisters?
It's so tough because, okay, so obviously there's stuff like Calvinism.
Yeah.
That's something, especially if you were in kind of a teenager 15 years ago, like I was. That was a huge debate at the time. It's still happening, but I feel like it's kind of died down a little bit. But that's always a tough issue when it comes to salvation, when it comes to hell, when it comes to things of that sort. I think that can be very intense. Free will. But I think what I found most difficult is having discussions with Christians that are actually holding on to beliefs that I think are completely like evil. And one would be like, well, for example, I don't believe someone not holding in Calvinism is evil, holding to Calvinism. So those are debates and dialogues, even though at one point I maybe did. But it's something like a Christian supporting abortion.
Yeah.
Being supportive of abortion. I'm kind of outing myself here, but I follow people that I grew up with that still profess to be Christians on my Instagram, and I see things that they either like or that they post. It's usually still kind of secretive. They're liking it, they're following these pages. I see them communicating with some of these people, and they're like pro-abortion Christians. And I'm like, it's one thing to have a debate on, let's say, theological issues that are maybe secondary issues, but when it comes to things like that, that's the most difficult for me. You know why? It's not difficult because it's hard to prove my position or to defend my position. It's hard because I find myself hating them sometimes, and that's kind of the residue of the human heart, the evil in my heart that still sometimes pokes out there, which is like, how can you do this? Like, I hate you for holding on to that position, for wanting to still support the murder of children, and not only do that, but do that like as a Christian, as someone who's supposed to be representing Jesus, who's supposed to be caring for the least of these. So those are the discussions I find most difficult. Art. It's discussions like that amongst believers.
Yeah, I think I'm at a point in my life where the secondary issues, like theologically, if we're agreed upon, say the Bible's the Word of God, and we ought to follow it and stuff like that, like I'm cool if you have like I'm cool with Nick being egalitarian. Like I can have a normal conversation, and we will, because Nick's about to come to town. Tom, mark your calendar.
Gonna take
He's
my
gonna
chair,
come to
Nick.
town. We're gonna be hanging out, but like we can sit together and discuss and enjoy each other's company, and not change each other's minds, but also maybe be challenged by each other's ideas. The stuff that I think it's probably mostly political stuff. I would agree with you.
Yeah.
It's hard for me when individuals are claiming to be Christians, and let's just say they are. Like I'm not gonna say, oh, it's a claim, but they're not really Christians.
Yeah.
They're Christians, and they support things in general society that I think is detrimental to the well-being of future generations.
That's right.
And the conversation almost and it's like even when you quote the Bible to them, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They sort of don't care. And maybe at times we talk past each other because they're quoting other passages. And I always feel like I have answers for those passages, but they're not really answering these other passages. That becomes a bit difficult, I think. And emotions get brought into the conversation really, really quickly. Where, again, I can sit with Tom and we can have a conversation and he'd be like, oh, bro, I don't even remember the last time it was you and I had a conversation about like Calvinism.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't come up.
Kind of past that at this point.
Yeah, like it literally does not come up. And he's a Calvinist and I'm not. And we used to talk about a lot of this stuff. But it's like we're past it. Now we like serve in ministry together, and most of the conversations we're having is like, how's discipleship going? Did this person come to know the Lord? Does Bible study this? Like there's a lot more practical sort of stuff happening in our circles.
That's right.
That really deal with people's lives and their salvation and stuff like that. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think there is some of that. No, let me see what Jack says. He's skipped his question. Okay. The argument could be made that they are in need. That's why they are dependent on some higher power. Okay. Where's the question here? What's the conclusion in a society that has plenty of unbiased in their what is plenty?
Yeah, I wasn't understanding Jack's.
Jack, I don't know what you're saying there. Rather than a country who is fully dependent on a higher power. It's not a country. I'm talking about societies historically developing and development being religious. You just don't have atheistic societies developing. All atheists come out of religious societies. For good or bad, I'm just saying.
That's right.
That's all I'm saying.
My difficult discussions are on the teachings of Bethel and NAR theology.
Yeah.
That's from...
Yeah, that can get really complicated. Yeah. I was actually speaking to someone yesterday, and we were talking about how it's very easy for me to make comments about cults, so like Jehovah's Witnesses or something like that. And it's a bit difficult to talk about this sort of NAR stuff because I largely believe quite a bit of people in those movements are believers. They believe all the important stuff they're supposed to believe. They've given their lives to Jesus. And again, I've said this before, I wouldn't be surprised that a number of these movements end up in 10, 20, 30, 50 years, turning into full-blown cults. But at the moment, like I'm very comfortable saying these people are Christians, but they have false beliefs and they have incorrect teachings that are genuinely affecting individuals. But yeah, that is. I mean, it also depends who's in your circles. And if they're involved in these things and how complicated some of those things could become. I know for sure there are complications in my relationship with some people being to the point where there are individuals that I'm very hesitant to do ministry with now because they've essentially given into some of these things.
How would you, just quick to piggyback off that question, how would you treat so if you have a person who claims to be a Christian, but is kind of wrong on every single one of these moral issues when it comes to abortion, gay marriage, whatever. I'm not talking about things that could be like immigration, where the views could be different, or even like fiscal, economic policies that it's like, oh, that guy's a socialist, so he's not a Christian. Like that stuff, that's granted. Like there's disagreements there, but I'm talking about clear moral lines. How do you deal with someone? Are you assuming that? I know you just kind of said it, but you assume that they can be like really strong believers and hold to these positions, or is your assumption automatically that if someone holds to these positions, either they're not a believer or they're a very immature one at best? How do you approach that conversation, especially having that apologetics mind?
Well, it's likely that they might not be a believer. It could be that they're immature. I've seen I've actually seen more people say things without having fully thought about it. And then I've brought in some clarification points, and they've been like, wow, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
It's just because they were in an echo chamber and nobody's really challenged them on these views.
That's right.
Right. I was actually the other day in a conversation where we were talking about reading, and the individual said they don't read and stuff. And then I told them why I read. And part of the reason why I started reading about different world religions and all that stuff is because I wanted to love my neighbor the best way I could. And my neighbors happen to be, and when I'm saying neighbor here, I mean very generally, Muslims and Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and stuff like that. And they might, what really caught their attention is that love is the motivating factor for me to read, not because I'm a nerd who loves reading. As a matter of fact, I don't like reading very much, and I'm a very slow reader. And it's hard work for me to read, to concentrate and all that. And what really caught their attention was, and this is a very caring individual, was the love thing. And I was like, that's interesting. That if I just told them, you should read more because it shouldn't be good for you to be stupid, like that wouldn't have gone anywhere. But when I explained my heart kind of on the subject and how I'm trying to be missional to the best of my abilities, that really got their attention. They're like, oh. But sometimes it's like they haven't been challenged. Sometimes it could be that they're not Christians, like they grew up in Christian circles and lingo and whatever.
Yeah.
But they're not really Christians, but they identify as such. And then it could be people who've just been bamboozled with bad theology. That's also there. And it really depends on the individual's ability to have a well-moderated, nuanced conversation without immediately getting emotional on the subject.
Yeah.
Because I know I can keep my cool in conversations like that and not get offended and still like hang out with you afterwards. The question is, quite often, I don't know how the other person's going to react when I make the comments that I do.
Yeah, it's tough. There's that saying where you lose an argument if you get angry or if the person you're speaking to gets angry. It's hard to keep that. Alexandria, I'm so curious where you said, as a former progressive Christian, pray for them and ask them questions. That's interesting because in my personal life, I haven't met many former progressive Christians. I've met former conservative Christians who are now progressive. So I'd be very curious to learn about how that process was for you. Oh, she kind of says it. I tried to justify transgenderism, but my conscience felt like it was wrong. I was suppressing the truth.
I think it's probably a combination of just like taking the Bible as seriously the Word of God. Individuals that I realize go down that route almost immediately give out the seriousness of the Word of God being God's revelation to us.
Good point.
That's a personal experience there. Okay, what else?
A lot of comments here.
Yeah, I know. Question. Nick, if you have an hour and Ruslan was moderating, Ruslan is not a good moderator, by the way. I just, like, Ruslan has said he's not a good moderator. He gets involved too much. He did a good job moderating the David Wood Alex O'Connor debate. But I've seen him do, like, political discussions where people were like, oh, it feels like it's a 3-on-1 or a 2-on-1 because Ruslan would, like, share his opinions a lot. So I'm not sure whether I would want Ruslan to be moderating, but let's just say
maybe Pisa will be moderating that.
That'd be horrendous now. And again, he hasn't been around. So let's just assume all things. The next question is a hypothetical. Ruslan's moderating and live streaming. What topic would you discuss with Alex O'Connor? The subject I would like to discuss, that would be fun, and I discussed it slightly with Alex, is how does atheism account for religious experiences? And whether the best explanation to religious experiences is the truth of said religion or atheism. Because I actually think that's the way Alex can become a Christian, is if he has a religious experience. So I don't know whether I think I've shared this, but I asked Alex about a religious experience I had where I had a dream about about my wife being pregnant and the birth of my son. And my wife was sitting next to me when I said this. My son was in the background running around. I told Alex, I said, "This is my wife." I called and told her she's pregnant. She didn't believe me. And then kept telling her she's pregnant and didn't believe me till about a month passed, until she took a pregnancy test, figured out she was pregnant, went to the doctor, and the doctor told us that she's 5 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And I had that dream when she was a week pregnant. It's not like we were trying to have a baby and expecting, like, none of that stuff. And I said, the kid that's running around in the background is the son that was born out of this thing, this dream. And I asked Alex how he explains that. And he said, I don't know. It's kind of spooky. And I think that's a fair response.
Yeah.
He said dreams are kind of spooky because I've heard similar sort of stuff.
It's either that or they're fully condescending atheists when you talk to them.
Yeah, again, like, I don't know how other atheists would respond to that. Like, I frankly don't care about how atheists respond to that, because I have so much evidence for that experience. And there's so many people that knew about it and have known about it, that some random guy across the ocean who thinks I'm dreaming this or something like that, it's like just meaningless to me. Because I think testimonial evidence, especially when you have multiple people testifying to the same thing, is pretty decent evidence. And if they don't believe that, I would really not want them to be on a jury.
That's right. Yeah, Kay and Nick's trying to take my job here. Nick's not letting me stay on this job for 3 weeks before he tries to come and take it from me. All right, Nick.
Jack says, you don't think O'Connor might try to naturalize his supernatural experience? I'm just telling you what Alex told me. He said it's spooky. I don't really have an experience. And then that's why, and then I, as a response, kind of cheeky response, I said that's why Christianity is a better worldview. Because we have a response.
You were hallucinating.
I must have been. Now you got to explain how my hallucination was actually a true thing that happened.
Yeah.
Which is a lot more difficult than a dream.
That's right.
Jerome, stop getting angry, bro.
Jerome is angry today.
I know. He's like, this makes me upset. I know why he's angry. You know why?
Why, his team lost? Or Liverpool? What's going on?
We're going to win the league. We're going to win the league. Now you're going to believe us. Now
I actually called. I called Jerome at 5 a.m. yesterday, by the way. I can't
believe you did that.
And I kept saying Jerome, and he was like,
Poor guy was sleeping.
I was like, hey, Jerome, you there? He's like, And even their hums are British, like, I was like, what time is it? He's like,
I am wearing my Liverpool top today because basically if Liverpool wins one more game, they get crowned. A commentator I was watching yesterday said the coronation will have to wait till next week. So he's like, Arthur, you told me it's literally 16 hours ago. I did. I just reminded him. But that's why he's angry, because, Arsenal can still win the Champions League, so that'd be nice. Not hating. The way men fight about sports is funny. That's assuming women don't fight about sports, by the way. Stop being sexist. Have you watched rugby? If I finish, he said, if I finish this PhD, not when I finish. If I finish the PhD, I may fly down to Australia and see a game before I walk. Hey, no, I have not. But there's another sport in Australia that's really popular, and my friend Dan from Australia, Dan runs an apologetics ministry there. Dan said that I think it's called Australian rules football. the field is a giant oval. It's humongous. And it's sort of like a combination of soccer and rugby. So it looked very interesting to me.
I thought you were going to say like kangaroo riding or something.
That's messed up. In a debate with William Lane Craig, his naturalist opponent said that he would believe if he saw this crazy supernatural event happened, and Craig said, "Don't you think you would say you're hallucinating?" I remember this. And he said, "I would." I think the response was like, "I think I would." Ah. But again, be very careful not to think like, therefore all atheists think like that. Like, let's not be, there we go. I know Dan. Had a long talk with him at ETS. There you go. Dan's a great guy. He flies long distances to come to America. To come to America. The America.
I've eaten kangaroo. That's messed up, man.
Why is it messed up?
You can't eat kangaroos.
Why not?
That just seems wrong.
Why?
Kangaroos?
Bro, you personally,
No, stop
you personally, I know you. You eat pig, you eat sheep, you eat cow, you eat the baby of the cow, you eat the baby of the sheep.
Yeah, but come on.
You eat the baby of the pork.
Universally agreed that there's animals like kangaroos you don't eat.
That's not true. It's not
Would you eat?
Yes,
would
absolutely.
You eat
Yeah.
would you eat a lion?
I've actually had horse meat.
You would have a lion?
Yeah.
You would eat a lion?
Yeah, if it tastes good.
Oh, man.
Have you had rabbit?
No.
Why not?
Because they're cute and fluffy. I don't want to kill it and eat it.
Bro, you sound like
Whatever.
my daughter.
Rabbits,
You sound like my daughter.
rabbits.
She's
Okay, rabbits are
9.
more. But come on, a kangaroo. That's messed up.
Yeah, maybe it tastes good.
There's no way a kangaroo.
Bro, you're a fake conservative. Like, seriously.
No, man, you can't eat kangaroos.
Why?
I'll die with that. That's a hill I'm willing to die on.
Would you eat a bear?
No.
Bro, my brother sent me a video of a guy smoking bear shoulders. I'll send it to you. Now, again, it might not taste good.
Mm.
There's plenty of stuff that doesn't taste good. That's why we don't eat it. But also, taste is a weird sort of thing. Like, people like duck. Have you had duck?
Would you eat it? Yes, I have had duck.
So,
It's
do
very
you
good.
think
In
duck tastes
France-
good?
Yes.
See, I don't think duck tastes good.
I liked it.
I don't think it tastes good.
Have you had it in France?
No, I haven't had it in
Paris.
France. Sorry. I've flown through Paris when I was younger.
Last
but
time I was
really
at Paris.
haven't visited France like some of
Very
these,
delicious.
foo-foo folks.
These second chairs are getting paid really well going to France and visiting. Woo!
Come on now. Have you had escargots? Snail?
No.
So I've had
that
snail.
sounds disgusting.
So here's the thing. I actually like it. You know why? It's not actually slimy. It's like pretty hard. It tastes like heart to me. Lamb heart. And I eat lamb heart all the time. Do you eat heart? Do you eat heart? Say it. Be a man.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you eat liver?
Yes.
Okay, stop talking. I wouldn't eat kangaroo. Of course you would.
Yeah, but I wouldn't eat a kangaroo's
we
heart
end up-
or a kangaroo.
Why not? If we end up in Australia, bro,
Would you eat
we're
a dog?
eating
Would you eat a
kangaroo.
dog if it tasted good?
Yes. If it tasted good. Now, again, I've never had dog. And it's just like weird, the thought of it. But yeah, why not? It's
Okay.
open game, man.
I can't argue against this. I mean,
Open
if you admit you would potentially eat a dog,
Dude, I've wanted to eat alligator for a long time.
all right, the alligator is fine.
Why?
Because they're not. There's a difference between a bear and an alligator.
You're way
Everyone knows that.
You are way too emotional.
Guys, who do you agree with more? He just admitted that he would eat a dog if it tasted good.
If it tasted good.
Just think of your little puppy.
Have you ever had a bird?
Your little
Have you ever had
Maltese poo.
birds? Have you ever eaten a
Yeah,
bird?
but you're not connected. They don't have souls. Dogs have
Oh
souls.
my gosh, go away. Okay, we're going to answer the super chat. Again, Jaden, thank you very much, man. Jaden's keeping us alive with super chats today. He's feeding the baby. We've actually purchased a lot of stuff. We've probably spent, I'd saved to about $700 to $800 on the office in the last month. Now, praise God, some people have just like unexpectedly given some money, and we've had super chats. So appreciate the continuous support, folks.
That's funny. I don't think this is what Peter Paul had in mind.
Who said that?
Jack.
With what?
Yeah, Arthur would be like Arthur would be on the further right on this issue than Paul was. He'd be like,
Brother,
we should eat
the
everything.
Bible says
eat alligators,
the Bible in the Gospel of Mark says that Jesus made all food clean. Good. I'm good. So Jaden says this: when are gray areas honest confusion versus clever ways to ignore God's standards? Very good question. I think Jesus points clear pictures plus implicit evidence in the Bible. Lust parallel to adultery. Do you deal with this? That's a really good question. Yeah, I would suppose somebody would have to make a case as to why something would be a gray area. Tom actually brought up a good point in regards to like political views on economy, like how government should spend money. I think you can make a decent case as to why that's a gray area biblically, meaning you could have biblical arguments that go this way or that way.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think some of these things are taught in the Bible. Like, how do you respond to a foolish person? Like a fool, what the Bible considers a fool, right? There are Bible passages in the book of Proverbs that says if you respond to a fool, you become a fool like him. So which is telling you don't respond to a fool. And then there are Bible passages that say, respond to a fool that you expose his foolishness or his folly. So that's the Bible passage that says, respond to the fool. So what do? Well, what the Bible is essentially telling you is there are circumstances in which you respond to a fool and circumstances in which you don't respond to a fool. And you got to have the wisdom which one of the circumstances you're in. Now, the reason why I say that is because you can quote Bible passages where you spend, and the spending goes towards this, and that, and that's good. And then there are Bible passages where you can quote the Bible on issues like save and be wise when it comes to saving and all that stuff. And so you'll have Christians on both sides, and I think that's therefore a grayish kind of gray issue. But somebody would have to argue their position why that's a gray area rather than just assume it.
Mm.
I couldn't eat alligator. But look, that's your that's your psychological kind of stance. It's okay. When in Rome. Tom doesn't eat hearts. He breaks them.
I love that comment. That's a great comment. I'm back to liking you.
I hope your wife's watching this.
That's not how I meant it.
These things you're talking about is not food. Says who?
Who said that? I agree with you. Whoever
Bro,
said that.
you guys are like cultural snobs.
Jack, my man.
You guys are absolute snobs when it comes to culture.
I mean, out of necessity, maybe, man. Like, if you're in a poor country and all you have is
Wow,
kangaroos
bro,
running around.
stop.
No, I'm serious. If you have the option not to eat a lion, it's a beautiful animal. It's in trouble. It could get extinct. I don't want to eat that.
Okay, that's different, man. You're bringing ethical
but
things
that's the
into
things
this.
about these beautiful
like
animals.
why can't we like breed lions for eating?
And I can't wait to clip these out. Somebody screen record these right now.
What? I don't understand.
I want to eat dogs. We should breed lions for eating.
Look, you said, would I eat one? If it tasted good. That's an if-then statement.
I don't know, man.
Like, I don't know whether it tastes good. So if I was presented with it, I might like take a little sample to see if it tasted good.
FEMA might be listening right now.
I don't care.
I
wasn't talking about eating in America.
Do not let this man have a dog.
Look, I'm pretty sure
Hey,
eating...
I've always wondered, have you not had dogs or have you just eaten them?
I have not had any dogs.
Okay, good.
That's not because I've eaten them. Look, if I end up in a place where kangaroos are like fine to be eaten, and then somebody invited me over for dinner, and they served me kangaroo, you know what I'm going to do? Eat it.
I would kindly decline.
Bro, see, this is why you be a horrible missionary.
Yeah.
Horrendous missionary.
No, I'm sorry. Can't eat that rat today. I'll have to pass on. So would you eat that, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're committed right now.
I have to be. Say it. This is your only chance of like just saying random stuff.
I mean, if you maybe that would be a great missionary if you did that. If you ate a rat.
I'm just, become all things to all people.
Mm.
And you might not like. I didn't say I would like it. I said I'd eat it.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen the Madagascar cockroaches where they deep fry them?
No, I wouldn't
Yeah,
like
man.
to see that either.
Yeah, they deep fry them. They sell them like chips.
Maybe if you're ever a missionary, they'll bring that as dessert. They'll bring
Bro,
the
they
cockroaches
sell
to
them.
you.
They sell them as like chips.
And then they'll be like,
It's all
Arthur,
protein.
we're so happy you're here in our
It's all
town. We have a
protein.
special protein for you today. And they'll bring this cute little Maltipoo on a platter.
Bro, now you're it's the heart emotions and stuff like that. Heart and liver tastes horrible to me. Liver, I like tolerate and stuff, but heart, don't say that, bro. Don't say that. It's
Liver and heart are
phenomenal.
good with some
Lamb
salt
heart is phenomenal.
definitely with some salt and lemon.
If Tom was on an island, he would be starving. They're too cute. On the other hand, I would be thriving.
Yeah.
Look, Agape is lolling this because she probably eats that stuff too. Question. The Bible says that fool says in his heart there is no God. Does that mean that everyone who says there is no God is a fool? To a certain extent, yeah. I don't mind saying that. I wouldn't use it up as an argument against atheists. I don't think it's very, you're not going to get far with it. I love how everybody in the chat is dropping their opinions.
You should have a poll.
Okay,
You should have a
Jack-
poll for this.
Jack, that's where the line stops. Okay, that's where it stops. Don't eat human beings.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go there. Did I think about going there? Potentially, but I wasn't going to go there.
Like chips took me out. Good for them. Yeah, but seriously, it's like in these giant things, and then they're like crunchy chips. Like that look, I think one of the reasons, Tom, is that we have issues when it comes to food is because we're not used to it. And like there's we make these psychological connections of like disgust and all this stuff. Like snake. Have you had snake?
No, have you?
I think so, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I would.
I feel like there's an unwritten rule. Like we all know what animals should never see. There's my preference.
If there is an unwritten rule, everybody would be agreed upon,
No,
and
they
everybody's
will be.
not in agreement.
Ask your
on it.
chat. So there will be animals people won't eat, but they're okay, like snakes,
Chat,
alligators.
Okay, chat.
Hold on. Let me give my argument. So there are stuff like snakes, alligators, octopus. Actually, not octopus. Snakes, alligators, weird stuff, snails, right? Where it's like I wouldn't eat it, cockroaches, but it's like it seems acceptable ethically.
Okay.
And then there's like lions, giraffes,
Okay.
zebras, bears.
You
No way, man.
like I'm pretty sure some Arabic countries eat giraffes.
Yeah, they beat them too.
They slaughter them and eat them.
Yeah, no, but they beat them like
Would you eat camel?
no.
Why not?
I don't know. It's just it's one of those animals, man. It's an unwritten rule.
You wouldn't eat a horse.
No, horses are companions. Dogs are Even throughout history, these things have been.
You know, there's a lot of like cold cuts that have horse meat in them and stuff. Just saying.
God,
Next time you're eating a nice piece of
there's
salami.
no way. That's disgusting.
Okay.
Chat, who do you agree with? Let's end this debate once and for all and tell Arthur that he's wrong.
It's all cultural, man. I agree. Lobster. Yeah, come on now. Lobster.
Lobster's good.
Oh, see? Now it's okay.
Yeah, but
He said octopus, and then he was like,
no.
like,
I said
I don't like calamari.
Yeah, but I said octopus is part of the animal that falls within the
Oh,
category.
it's okay-ish. Yeah,
It's
okay.
okay, but it's preference based.
Lobsters used to be given to prisoners because they were considered roaches of the sea. These guys were eating like the most expensive food. This is good being in prison. Feed us more.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Come on. Look, if you agree with me, put a 1 in the chat. If you agree with Tom, put a 2 in the chat.
Come on, let's see
how
all those
it's going.
twos. If
There's
you have
about
a heart,
20 something with you
if
guys.
have
We're
a
gonna
heart, put a 2 in the chat.
we're gonna end the stream soon. So if you eat heart, put a 1 in the chat. So if you agree with Arthur on the eating of everything, put 1. If you're sensitive, put 2 in the chat.
Unbelievable.
I'm waiting for this.
Unbelievable.
Salami's pork.
No,
Talk to
there's the
some. Talk to some Italians, man.
one. 2. Thank you, Alexandra.
1. I'm winning 3-2.
Oh,
Alexandria.
man, that's
Okay,
terrible.
hey, it's okay. It's okay.
That's terrible. I would not want my dog. I wouldn't want you guys anywhere near a dog park, by the way. What's on the menu today? German Shepherd?
Arnold's with me. Bro, I'm not saying it like that.
I know,
Stop
I
trying
know,
to
I'm-
mischaracterize it. Arnold's with me. Good to go.
I'm disappointed in the chat today. Very
Come on, chat. Let him know.
Just think about those PETA videos with those dogs, like
Really?
"In the arms
PETA?
of an angel.
Bro, food is food.
Look at all these ones coming in.
Jack said, 2, I don't eat my friends or companions. You don't have to eat your friends or companions.
Guys, I'm uncomfortable in this studio right now. Let's just hope Arthur's not hungry.
Joshua said 1.5. I like that.
Arthur, did you have breakfast this morning, or am I should I run out of here? Oh,
I'm gonna go have lunch right now.
Hmm.
And I'm not gonna tell you what's being served.
yeah.
Do you like crawfish?
No. But I wouldn't be opposed to eating it
Okay.
because it's not, tiger. If it's in the zoo, you don't eat it. That's the way I would.
Jerome said, I swear Arthur can just say that one verse over and over and win this interaction. Look, there's a difference between something being biblically allowed to do versus whether, and I agreed. I mean, there's probably plenty of stuff I won't eat,
Yeah.
but it's highly dependent on the situation. So if I go to Australia and my friend invites me over and he's got kangaroo, I don't have any attachments, dude. Like, whatever. Just I suppose kangaroo
Would you eat a
meat.
baby kangaroo?
I suppose
a little baby that's
that'll probably taste a lot better than a grown kangaroo because
just
kangaroos.
jumps out of the mama's little
That's fine.
pouch
I
and
don't
you're gonna
care.
kill it.
I don't care. The emotional stuff doesn't get to me. The reason why a baby kangaroo would probably taste better than we're gonna get flagged for this. Than an adult kangaroo is because they develop muscle like crazy and probably wouldn't taste as good. Food is most definitely food. Yeah, that's a truism. Tom has good taste. I didn't know that.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. brother.
Or he's kind of a squeamish, pansy-ish guy who doesn't like take risks. Do you eat sushi?
I love sushi.
Do you eat sashimi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, come on now. Look, man, if you're eating raw meat, do you eat chikufta?
I can't.
Do you eat chikufta?
Yes, but I can't.
Bro, you eat a raw beef.
Yeah, but not the raw beef of a kangaroo.
Well, that's a contradiction. It wouldn't be called beef.
Whatever.
But like you're eating raw meat of multiple sorts.
Yeah. Just not nice.
Yeah, I think you're
warrior
letting
animal.
your emotions get involved too much here.
I think there's a whatever. Let's just say most people in society would agree with me when it comes to eating certain animals. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay. If you and Nick want to roast
serious.
Selective PETAism is a bad look for an Armenian, bro.
So I have a question for you, Nick. I gotta go, but I have a question for you, Nick. Do you think it's wrong that there are laws against eating dogs in the United States?
Oh, that's a good question.
Is that a wrong law there? Should that be reversed?
But is there?
Yeah, of course there is. You can't eat a dog. Brother, shut this down. Shut her down. You can't. Yeah, of course there's a law. There's a lot of animals you can't eat in the United States. Kangaroo would also be one of them.
Yes, the Federal Dog and Cat Meat Trade Prohibition Act of 2018. Bro, meaning before 2018, you can eat your dogs and cats?
No, you couldn't. That's false. That's completely false.
Signed into law as part of the 2018 Farm Bill, bans the slaughter, transport, sale, or purchase of dogs and cats for human consumption in the United States. While not a complete ban on eating dog meat, it makes it illegal to engage in activities that lead to being consumed. Bro, this is not against the law. Tom, this is not against the law. It's against the law to basically be like producing it and selling it and trading it and stuff.
Did you put in the United States?
Yes.
I doubt you did that. This is probably like some random
Look, I wrote,
country.
are there laws in the U.S. against eating dogs?
Yeah, I don't know.
So
man.
basically, it's like you can't be participating in the trade of it that leads to human consumption. But if you have like a dog that was born into your pets, you can eat it yourself, I think.
Or maybe it's saying if you accidentally eat a
Exceptions. Okay, exceptions. It says the law exceptions. The law does not apply to indigenous tribes engaging in religious or cultural practices involving the consumptions of dog meat. Enough said.
All right, whatever. All you dog
I
meat
didn't
lovers.
want to hurt him, but he made me. I didn't want to hurt him, but he made
Guys,
me.
pray for me. I have a dentist appointment on a tooth I've been trying to fix for 4 months.
Crazy. Here's a super chat again from Jaden. Do you think the food in Mark 7:19 applies to Franken foods that are made now? What is that? What's a Franken food?
Franken food.
Or was he talking about natural foods? He's talking about all foods. Yeah, I don't think there's a distinction there, Jaden. There shouldn't be. Arthur, why are it so excited in eating dog meat? I'm not, Jack. I'm not excited about it. I'm just saying it's interesting to me. And I think most of you guys here are speaking out of
Emotion.
privilege that you can go to the supermarket and eat, buy meat that you haven't slaughtered and all that, and then be like, oh, this is okay. And I'm just saying, given the situation, every one of you guys watching this will eat whatever needs to be eaten for you to survive. Maybe. I hope that human meat wouldn't be a part of that. Like, you just need to starve a couple of days. And you realize it. Hey, everybody, say bye to Tom. Tom's leaving. Bye, Tom. He's off camera now. Look at this. Now we have an empty chair. Sad. So sad. He left. He's got to go. He's got to go to an appointment. We'll do this for a little bit more, and then I'll head out too as well. Henry. And the king said to her, what is this matter with you? And she answered, the woman said to me, give your son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. What is this? Oh, like GMO stuff. Yeah, I mean, just. Okay, and the king asked her, what passage is this? Ben-Hadad's siege of Samaria. Yeah. Just a little teaching, Henry, on narratives are not teachings. It just tells you stuff people do, and people do a lot of wrong stuff. King asked her, what is your trouble? She answered, this woman said to me, give me your son, that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. Oh, I remember this story. Okay. Oops. This way. Basically, she tricks her. I mean, it's nuts. So this is even hard to read. Boiled my son and ate him. And on the next day, I said to her, give your son that we may eat him. But she has hidden her son. when the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes. Now he was passing by on the wall, and the people looked, and behold, he had sackcloth beneath on his body, and he said, "May God do so to me, and more also, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today." Elisha was sitting in his house, so on and so forth. Yeah, clearly what's being done in Israel is against the law of God. Like, there's no question about that. I don't know why. Well, I know why Henry would have gone there, but okay. I want sushi now. Oh man, this has been good. These Mondays are good, man. They really are. It takes us a while to get going, but once we get going, it's great. We spoke about the Pope today. We didn't, I wish we spoke about Easter and all that stuff, because it was quite the weekend. I put out a video, you guys. I'm actually pretty disappointed. And I don't know, I probably shouldn't have put it out on Saturday, but I put out a couple of videos. And one of them, if you guys go watch this, and if you haven't seen it, I'd really appreciate it. One of them is called "Islam Denies This Major Historical Event." Share that out and stuff like that. I put out another one, which is my Good Friday talk that I gave. It's about 25 minutes. I put that up, and then I took it down. And I'm going to put it back up. So, have I tried Puerto Rican food? I don't think so. I had like Jamaican food, had Ethiopian food. I actually had to text Jerome and ask him about Ethiopian food some time ago. And loved it, enjoyed it. Brother, your camera video capturing device thingy is crazy clear. New setup. Hey, Tony, we've just changed the lighting. It's just lighting, bro. That's it. I also got these. Check this out. These are cool. These are really cool devices. These just arrived. The blue you were seeing on Tom's end were two of these. It's tiny, and they attach together. So let me see. See that blue you're seeing is one of these. And they can change, and it's USB-C. I mean, I literally can do, I can turn that on and be like, okay, there we go, here maybe. Throw it in the back essentially, and it'll do the proper work, but it's just lighting, man. Thank you for dropping that. I've had Jamaican and Ethiopian food. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Would you say that the political left and right are, in simple terms, a distortion of Christ? I would say a improper allegiance to them is idolatry. That's 100% true. Like, I've had so many people think I got a new camera because of the lighting. It makes an absolute difference. Well, guys, it's 3:20. I got to go. Got a number of things to do. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. And I will see you guys hopefully soon, depending on how my schedule looks. If not sooner, Thursday. But if sooner, then sooner. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you've enjoyed this. Take care. God bless you guys.